Yo, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Jeff back here with Xylus, the Z33. We are moving along with Project Xylus, and this is going to be probably my most anticipated project to date that I've had for my car, and that is going to be the wide body flares. We're going to be custom fabricating from scratch, 100% from scratch, brand new wide body flares to widen this Z. That's going to help to accommodate my new wheels that I have, and it's just going to tie this whole car together. It's going to be absolutely massive. If it's anything like what I have in my mind, it's going to be insane. So this is going to be awesome. Hope you guys will enjoy this video series. It's probably more than likely going to be broken up into more than one video. It might even get into quite a few, as I will get into different videos for different sections of the process. Just because this is such a long process, it will need to be broken up into long videos. Otherwise, you guys are gonna be watching like a 2-hour, 3-hour video, and I don't want to do that. Anyways, so as I showed you guys in a previous video, I did do a concept of this wide body that I'm gonna be building. I made it out of clay on a little scale model of a Z, and I'm gonna try and get as close as I possibly can to that concept. Now, as it is a concept, there's always gonna be some change. There's always gonna be some little difference in variation and stuff like that, as I explained before. But I am going to be trying to get close to it. It may even get a little better in areas than that concept, which is very cool. As you get it on the car and you kind of get a chance to see it to scale, to actual scale, you can make some little minor adjustments here and there. So I'm really excited to see what we end up coming up with. But that is what I'm going to be going for. So in this series, I'm going to show you guys as in-depth as I possibly can from start to finish the process of doing this. Now there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. There's the way that I'm going to be doing it here, which is going to be fiberglassing the clay sculpt right over the top. You fiberglass and gel coat it, and then you sand it down to the absolute shape that you want. And then that is going to be your flare. That's your final project. The other way that you could do this is you could do the clay sculpt like you would with the other method as well, but you would actually go ahead and gel coat over the clay itself, and then you'd make a negative, and then you would actually pull the gel coat off. You fiberglass over the gel coat, and that becomes a shell mold. And so you actually have an imprint of the flare on the inside, and then you can go ahead and hand lay in fiberglass or carbon fiber if you want to make it out of carbon fiber or whatever you want to do. You can do it that way as well. But what I'm going to be doing is actually a little mixture of both methods. So I am going to go ahead and do the clay sculpt. You have to do that regardless. And then I'm going to go ahead and fiberglass it right over the top, and then I'm going to gel coat over the fiberglass, and then I'm going to sand it down to the shape that I want. And that's going to be my final flare for each corner. But then, depending on how much I like it, which I'm hoping beyond hope that I like it a lot, that's kind of the idea, I'm going to go ahead and more than likely make a mold of the final. And then if I get a good mold of the final, then I can actually produce more of this wide body kit, which who knows where that could go. You know, it could go, you know, there could be interest in it from other people. You know, that is if I decide that I want to mass produce this kit. Well, not necessarily mass produce it, but just produce more than one copy. But you know, it's all dependent on how well it comes out, you know, how well the quality of the mold is, and the quality of the positive and all that. So that is my idea. That's my plan at the moment, is to get it to a point where at the very least I have a one-off hella clean ass wide body kit, but I would like to make some extras, if for nothing else than to have replacements. If something ever happened to one of my flares, if one of them cracked or something like that, if I could just pull another one right out of the mold again and just put that sucker back on there. Beyond that, I could produce them and potentially sell them later on if there's interest, like I said. So I'm going to be doing kind of both. Now, a lot of you guys may not understand what any of that stuff is. I'm going to show you as in detail, like I said, from A to Z, get it? What's going on? Everything from the materials that it takes, to the process of the steps, you know, what materials you need to use, to mixing of the materials, to anything that I can think of to record. I'm going to be trying to record for you guys to see this, because once you grasp how to do this, the possibilities in your mind, they just explode. Like, you will feel like you can build or make anything. Once you've done like even just a basic fiberglass project or something, or whatever, just something even small, and you see the result that you can get if you do it right, honestly, you're just going to be exploding with ideas. I've been doing this kind of work for a little bit now, a few years. I've gotten some great stuff that I've made that I've really been happy with. I've also had my fair share of failures doing this kind of stuff. So I want to preface this entire series with, you know, I haven't even started on this. I've had successes, I've had failures, and I've had everything in between. While my hope is that this project is going to be easy and flawless and it's going to turn out great and all that, of course, I don't know. You know, there's always things. There's temperature variance with mixing. Things could go wrong. So I'm going to preface the whole thing with that, as I'm going to be doing my best here and showing you guys basically from A to Z, like I said. And if it turns out great, then that's freaking awesome. If I fail, then I fail. You know, we may not get a good result. And worst case scenario, I'll just have to buy, you know, some other wide body kit or whatever if I absolutely fail. But I'm gonna get that out there. I'm not like an insane pro or anything at this. I've never made a living doing fiberglassing or anything like that. I have learned everything that I'm doing here on my own, basically from buddies that have done this and told me kind of how to do it briefly, or you know, whatever, and trial and error all over the place. I'm gonna be doing it my way. It may succeed, may fail, I don't know. But in any case, it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna try to enjoy the process, and that's a big part of it. Whenever you get into a project like this, you gotta really enjoy the process. Don't focus too much on the end result that you start getting frustrated if it doesn't seem to be going in that direction as you're building it. You know, you really wanna focus on the current situation at every moment. You wanna make sure you're focused and get through it, and in my experience, that kind of thinking will get you to the best result. So that's how I'm going to be approaching this project. But I am super stoked. I couldn't be more stoked to finally get into this. I've gotten pretty much all my other smaller projects for the car out of the way. My last video was on the front splitter in the front. That turned out freaking awesome. And I've got the side winglets getting ready to go on. They finished up paint today, so I've got them all shaped out exactly, and I'm going to show you those. So this is going to be what the side winglets are going to look like. Okay, now the paint is the matte black, same, it's the matched matte black that I have on the side skirts and everything. And you can see that gold trim. It's a beveled gold trim all around that's going to help to match the gold trim on the side skirt. The splitter on the front also has the gold trim at this point. It has been painted, so these are actually going to be affixed to the sides, and then they're going to be held on with these aluminum brackets that I fabbed up, also painted in the rose gold. And they are cut exactly to size, so they're going to fasten actually onto the side like that, and then they're going to attach underneath the splitter, and then there's going to be some, more than likely, 4 screws right here that are going to screw into the splitter from the sides. But that's a quick little peek at the side splitter winglets, or the front splitter winglets that will be on the car probably by tomorrow. Just got to let the paint just around the edge here dry up a little bit overnight, and then we're good to go on those. But anyways, let's get started with the flare series here. I'm going to first show you all of the materials that I'm going to be using, and in this time I'm going to go in depth on each one of them and show you exactly what this stuff is that we're going to be using. Let's get to it. Alright, so here we are back at the work desk. This is going to be my area of operation for sure as we move along through this project. I have just a large variety of different molding and casting and sculpting materials here. A lot of this stuff we are not going to need actually for quite a while. Most of this stuff like the gel coat, the fiberglass and all that, we're not going to need any of this until the actual sculpt on the car is completely done and it's exactly the way that I want it. Once that's sculpted on there with the clay, then we're going to go in there with the fiberglass and then the gel coat on top of the fiberglass. So let's get into what some of this stuff is. I have 6.5 ounce fiberglass cloth. I also have a nice stack of chopped strand mat. You will need both. I imagine you could get this done with just the cloth, just the 6.5 ounce cloth, but the mat is nice to have too, just to apply them both. It just helps to enhance the strength. So that I definitely recommend is get cloth and mat, and I do recommend 6.5 ounce. It tends to be the perfect middle ground of thickness as well as thinness to work around corners and around edges and stuff like that. If you go too thick on it, of course, you're going to have more durability. It's going to be thicker and you'll need less layers, but it's going to be so thick that you're not going to be able to conform it around corners and especially get into little crevices and stuff like that. So I recommend the 6.5. tends to get the best result, again, just in my experience. So I've got the cloth and the chop strand mat for our fiberglass. Okay, now I'm going to go through this stuff in no particular order. I'm just going to kind of go from left to right. I have here on the bottom, this is orange tooling gel coat. Now what gel coat is gel coat is basically a resin. It's a polyester based resin, and it hardens up just like a resin would, but it has just a little bit of a different property to it. It's widely used in marine projects and stuff like that, for boats and things like that. It has a really good resistance to water and moisture in general. That's why it's used on a lot of boats and stuff like that, and it's fantastic. The tooling variety is great for making molds. We're going to be using the application of this to actually make our negative mold after I actually have it completed. Once I have the positive completely done, fiberglassed, and the white gel coat over it, then I'm going to actually use the orange tooling gel coat to actually make a mold of that. This is going to be our second operation. Just to the right of it here is unwaxed white gel coat. This will get really hard. It's a lot like the orange gel coat, but it has just a slightly different property. It's not necessarily the best for making molds, but it makes great positives, and it's very easy to sand. Tooling gel coat, again, is going to be best for mold making outer shell molds. The white gel coat is good for just outer layer, easy to sand, and also for making positive pulls from your shell molds. I have here PVA mold release. This is basically a liquid, it's almost like a liquid film, a liquid plastic, where you actually brush it on with like a chip brush like this to the inside of a negative mold, something that we would make with the orange tooling gel coat. It goes on as a liquid, and in about 20 minutes it dries to a film barrier, which actually keeps the layup, whatever you're laying up into your mold, from actually sticking to the mold. You need a variety of mold releases, but this is one of the ones that you use, is the PVA. You use that in addition to the mold release wax, which is this mirror glaze stuff here from Meguiar's. These are mold releases. This is the wax and this is the PVA. This is actually the same kind of stuff that's used in like wood glue, like Elmer's wood glue. You might notice on some of those wood glue containers they say PVA glue, and that's essentially what it is it's a liquid, and then once air hits it, it dries into a film. That's how that wood glue stuff works. Here we have polyester resin. This is probably the most widely used type of resin. This is what we're going to be using with our fiberglass here. Most of you guys probably already know resin. It's just a two-part deal. One part of the resin and then a little bit of the Mech P hardener, which is this stuff here. You know, it's simple to use. You just got to make sure you mix it correctly, and just be careful with it. It's a liquid at first, and then just a little bit of time it sets up, hardens up, especially with fiberglass. It works fantastic. Widely used in many projects, from automotive to marine to whatever, you name it. Any kind of project you can imagine, polyester resin is the go-to. Over here we have silica powder. This is by System 3, and this is essentially just an additive that we can add to the resin, the polyester resin, or the gel coat to help to thicken it up. It's essentially just a thickening powder for your resin. And because we're going to be doing a project on a semi-vertical surface like this, when we're applying resin to it, we don't want the resin to flow down and drip off too much. We want to be able to have a lot of the resin to stay up on the upper portion and not drip down too much. That's why we're going to go ahead and add some of the thickening powder to help thicken it up almost to like a very smooth peanut buttery type of consistency, and that's going to help us out a lot. So that's the System 3 silica powder. Back over here we have Bondo. This is just standard body filler. Now this comes in various types. There's like strand filler, which has actually some fiberglass in it, and there's also a metal filler and stuff like that, but I'm just using the standard stuff right now. The standard stuff tends to be the easiest to sand and work with. It's just kind of a middle of the road type of a filler product. Works great for what we're going to be doing, which is just smoothing out any imperfections in our final product. So we got a nice full can of Bondo here. There's no way in hell we're going to need all of this, but it's good to have enough just in case. So that pretty much covers all of the chemical type of products that we're going to be using. Now you'll notice some other little accessory things here. A lot of mixing sticks, mixing cups, chip brushes, gloves, a respirator. You're definitely going to need that because we're working with resin quite a bit here. You just need a basic array of accessories that you would typically use with this type of stuff. Really basic stuff. But before we get into using all that, we of course need to do our clay sculpt, and in order to do our clay sculpt, we need clay. Now I'm using a plastilina oil-based clay. This is a non-hardening type. It stays pliable at all times because it's an oil base. This is a great clay to work with because, you know, it never hardens, it always stays pliable. It gets a little harder in colder temperatures, but you can warm it up. It warms up really well because it is oil-based, and it works great. You can really get it into any shape you can imagine. It has a slight firmness to it that I like for getting straight lines and certain particular details that I like. I've used it a lot in a lot of my projects that I've done. I've gotten great results. The downside to it is that, one, it's pretty expensive stuff. I have probably, in this giant thing of clay here, I probably have about 35 to 40 pounds of clay here, just that I've collected over the years of different projects and stuff like that, and I've kept in here. This bucket of clay is probably worth a couple $100 at least. That is a little bit of a downside with using this. The other downside is that when you pack it on, it gets really heavy. The weight is definitely a factor. If you don't know ahead of time that this stuff gets really heavy, you may be in for some trouble as you get along into your project. If you're making a big project like this, you definitely got to take the weight of the clay into consideration. And I will explain a little bit about how I'm going to deal with that in just a moment. So the clay is something that you definitely need, and you're going to need a lot of it for this. So plan ahead for that. There are other options. You can use like a potter's clay, which is going to be a little more forgiving, a little more soft than this. So you may not be able to get quite as good a line or a detail into it, but it's going to be cheaper than this for sure, and it may even be a little bit lighter. So, you know, again, I'm using plastilina oil-based modeling clay. You can get this pretty much anywhere at any basic hobby or craft store. You can also order it online, Amazon or whatever, eBay, and it works great for what I'm going to be doing here. Now, back to the weight. You'll notice these are actually key hangers with an adhesive back. You can get these at like the dollar store or whatever. Now I'm going to be using these to affix right to the surface area here of my project, and these are going to be supports for my clay. This is going to help the clay from sagging down and potentially cracking and falling off because of the weight. As I continue to lay up the clay, it can get so heavy that it will actually want to fall off, especially if it doesn't want to stick to my tinfoil here. You'll also notice that as I've done my coverage work here with my tinfoil, I've applied this white packing tape in ribs here, and this is essentially acting as a grip tape for my clay. Because it does get so heavy, it will help to grip on that packing tape as I lay it up, so that's going to help. But I'm going to fix these little key hangers with the adhesive back in key areas where the clay is going to get really heavy and bulky. You can see I've already affixed one right here, and this is where I've kind of calculated that there's going to be a big buildup of clay right here, and it's going to be really heavy on this vertical surface. This is almost a completely vertical surface right here, so the clay is not going to want to stick to this at all. So I'm going to have to maybe even put a couple right here to really help to support that clay. I've used these in the past and they've worked well. We're going to be using these and affixing these in just little key areas, and that should help us with the weight. So that's going to be the basic gist of the materials that we're going to be using to do this project. Now let's talk about the actual car and what we've got going on here at this point. Now I showed you guys briefly at the beginning of my splitter build video that I had gone ahead and completely tinfoiled up the area here that we're going to be starting on. It will eventually look like this on the other portions of the car as well once we get into the other sections of the car. But as this is going to be the first area that we're going to be working on, this is the area that I've wrapped up at this point. Now this is double and triple layered tin foil with double side tape on the back of it to protect all of the paint in this area. Now along the black line here, this is the projected area that the flare is going to be built on, and just around this area right here, just on the outside of this line, is where there's going to be gel coat resin going down, and you want that definitely protected in those areas in particular. This is triple layered right here all along the outer edge of the black line, because we're going to be laying the gel coat and the fiberglass resin all over the top of the clay right here, and it's all going to spill out onto this portion right here. If you don't have that protected enough, then that's going to go right through and right into your paint, and it's going to wrinkle your paint and destroy the paint on your car. So I have definitely taken my time and wrapped it up really well. Tin foil will protect the resin from penetrating through and getting to the paint. So it's not just one dinky little layer, there's multiple layers on there as well. Okay. Now, as I also said, I used the white packing tape as a grip tape for my clay. This is only serving the purpose of helping my clay to stick to this portion of the car. It gets really vertical in certain areas, so it will help to just grab a little bit on the rougher texture of the packing tape right there. I'm also going to be using my little clips or my little key hangers right there for support, as well as I had stated. I've got all this masked off. I've got my hub masked off and all that, because resin will drip and all that, and I will be putting down a piece of cardboard or something as well as we get into the resin process to protect the ground, because you will get drip of polyester resin and gel coat and stuff more than likely coming down here. So account for that. Make sure you've got everything masked off in any of the areas that you're going to be working with. I've got my polyurethane base flare here. These are the flares that I bought from Icon Motorsports. That's these guys right here. Now this is something that you don't necessarily have to do a project like this, but it's going to make it a hell of a lot easier, because this is really going to give me a base shape and a base width to go on. You can see this lip right here. It's exactly how wide I want it to be. I already measured it out and made sure it was exactly where I wanted it to be, in line with the bottom of the quarter panel right there. And then I went ahead and made any necessary cuts to get the proper line all the way around. I cut that out to shape and stretched it in certain areas where I wanted it to be. Okay, so what I'm going to end up doing is just taking my clay and laying it up from the line here all the way down to this line right here, and I'm just going to leave this area exposed right here, because that's the exact line. It's perfectly straight already. I don't need to make any adjustments. I don't need to try and sculpt that line in. So you can see that's already looking really good right there on the edge. I mean, it just makes it easier to have a base to work with. So all I have to do really is just lay up the clay and get it into the shape that I like, and then we can just go ahead and apply the fiberglass and all that. Down in this area right here, this is going to be probably the most work that I'm going to have to do, because I'm going to have to go ahead and build a custom corner and all that, and maybe even cut a little bit of this plastic off if it's not working, or if it's in an area that it's not supposed to be. I will probably end up having to cut a little bit of this off right here, and then just follow the shape in the clay that I like, something that's reminiscent of the concept that I did on the scale model. On the back side here, we're going to be coming down. This is along the tail light here. You can see the indentation of the tail light there. Hopefully it's just along the tail light. It's going to come up to where the bumper line here meets the quarter panel line, and it's going to follow this diagonal line straight down this way. So the flare is going to come out. It's a very, very Rocket Bunny / Stardust-esque type of thing, but the key difference between the flare that I'm going to be making and those flares is that whereas theirs come up here and go short of this top body line right here, come up to about this portion, mine actually go up all the way up to this body line right here and then follow the tail light. This is going to be something more reminiscent of like a Crown Carbon crafting rear quarter panel flare, something like that, but with the Rocket Bunny type of style, Stardust type of style, especially through the backs. The fronts are going to be much more custom, much more different, much more unique, but the rears are going to be different mostly in that they're going to rise up much higher up on the quarter panel. It's going to be really great. It's not going to be like super thick or anything, and it's not going to come out really horizontally like the Rocket Bunny one comes out. It's going to be nice, and it's going to flow with the body line a lot. You can see how even though I have this aftermarket flare on there, the body line is just nicely complemented by it. It's not any kind of a weird contrasting line or anything. So I'm basically just going to be making a very thin layup of clay right here that's going to mold this area right here together. Again, we're going to come right out to this lip line right here, and then we're going to be doing all of our sculpting work in here to help build the flare in this section, and in this section it will be a little wider as well. I'm satisfied with the protection at this point. I'm feeling like I'm ready to go in with my clay and start getting the clay up on there. Now, as I move along, I'm going to be adding little supports here and there as I feel like I need them. I think we're going to be just fine with this. So I'm excited to finally say, let's start building these flares and get this car wide-bodied. Let's do it. Alright, so here we are about 50% through the driver's side rear flare. It's looking really good at this point. I've had to make a few adjustments here and there as I went along, as you always will have to with this type of project. Very rarely are you ever going to get into a project and just have it looking perfect the whole way through. It's not the case, at least in my experience. It just never happens that way. So it's always just a process of trial and error, and looking at it from many different angles and just determining if there's too much clay in certain areas or not enough clay in other areas, and then just evening it out over time. At this point I'm about 10 hours into this sculpt, and I've got, like I said, about 50% done. I've got the front portion here looking pretty good. It's looking real close to what I imagine the final result will be. I still do have to go in through the back at this point. It's going to probably be at least another 10 hours worth of work through the back, just to not only fill in the clay but to detail it as well. We're going to be getting into all that. But I do want to note that the video quality at this point should look considerably better. I did get my new camera in the mail, so we're going to be switching over to the new camera at this point. And not only for this video series, but for all the videos going forward, we're going to be using this setup. And thankfully it's going to look a lot better. Hope you guys are enjoying the new video quality here. I certainly am. So that's going to be what's going on. We're going to move on now to the second half of the rear driver's flare. Once we have the sculpt completely done and everything is satisfactory to my taste, we're going to go ahead and make symmetry ribs, which are going to allow us to take those ribs over to the other side of the car and lay them up in the exact position on the opposite side to allow us to then get the exact symmetry on the other side. We're just going to lay up the clay up to the ribs. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about when we get to that point. But for now, let's move on and do the back portion. It's looking sick. Hope you guys are enjoying. Let's keep going. Alright guys, well, after 3 days of sculpting and probably about 20 hours or so worth of sculpting work, I'm happy to say we finally got the first rear quarter panel sculpt completed. This thing is looking awesome. Let me show you guys some of the detail. First of all, I used about 3 different colors of clay that I've collected over the years. That's all been mixed together, so the color and the texture of it may make it a little bit difficult to see how smooth this thing is. So sorry about that, but this is the final shape that I ended up going with. I'll try and show you some of the detail. And this is, again, you can see a lot of Rocket Bunny inspiration in there, but very different in many areas as well. Through the back. This is what we're looking like from this angle. And back through here. This is very Rocket Bunny-esque here, but still very different. You can see just how smooth. And look at this curve that I got in here. See this curve? This is very different than the Rocket Bunny, in that the Rocket Bunny just comes straight out through the top, whereas I really wanted to emphasize that curve to keep that beautiful body line that the Z has. And so I went ahead and made sure to add that curve all the way through. As my camera focuses here, you can see the curve again coming in through right there. That should look really beautiful once these flares are all finished, sanded down and painted and everything, the body color. it should look just like an extension of the Z's natural lines. You can also see, here's the flare design that I had concepted. Here on the concept, you can see how it comes all the way up to the bottom of the rear hatch. And that's exactly what I did on the final sculpt. Instead of coming up to about this point, where the rocket bunny comes up to, I came all the way up to where the rear hatch is right there, and then followed this line here, where the tail light comes up to, created that little notch right there, and then followed the tail light line all the way back through the back. And you can see, nice, smooth, straight through here, and then we have a little bit of curved detail down through the bottom portion right there. Hope you guys are liking what this is looking like. I'm liking it a lot myself. I think it's going to look fantastic. It's definitely got a lot of inspiration from other wide body kits, but still very, very unique as well. It's kind of a mishmash of a bunch of different stuff. It's not too wide too. That's the thing I really like about it the most, is it's definitely wider, but it's not too wide. If I put the camera underneath, you can actually see exactly how much wider this is. If you look under here, so this right here, this inner line, this is the factory quarter panel, and this is the flare that I used, that I sculpted over. So there's about a good 1.5 inches right there, close to 2 inches worth of width that we're adding there, which is exactly how much I need to fit my wheels into there. It's gonna look sick, man. Now what I have to do at this point is I'm gonna go ahead and measure out where my mounting points are gonna be. I'm gonna actually carve in some little mounting points in this, so it looks nice and clean when I put my rivets in there. Work continues, work goes on, but we're moving along, guys, looking sick. Stay tuned. I've now gone in and carved in all of my rivet mounting points. There's 15 in total that I ended up having to put into the entire flare. Perfect amount. I didn't want to go over 15, and it came out to exactly 15. I was able to space them out about 6 inches approximately, a little bit of a distance between some of them on the ends, but it all looks really nice, came together awesome. Let me show you guys what those look like at this point. So they are all carved in, just like that. You can see those hopefully. These ones in the corner are very, very important. Down there. 2 very important ones back there, as you can see, and then there's one in the middle there, and then a very important one down there. And then over on this side as well, we have them going all the way down to the front. There's that important one right there in the very front, and then that one down there, also very important. So 15 total. So this sculpt is completely finished at this point. Now I could go in and spend another 2 or 3 hours just perfectly fine-tuning every little line and trying to smooth it out and all that, but it's just going to be impossible to get it absolutely perfect. There's a refining stage, just like there was for the splitter. The same thing as there's the refining stage. Whenever you're building something, the first part of it is usually just the building phase, and then there's the refining stage, and that's where you're really going to clean it up. Now, with that being said, I had originally said that we were going to do this by fiberglassing and then gel coating over the top of that, and then sanding down the gel coat to our final stage. But what I have decided at this point is I'm going to go ahead and do it the other route, and that is I'm going to just go ahead and do the gel coat mold and then fiberglass on top of the gel coat. Then I'm going to pull it off and then pull one of these out of the mold with white gel coat. I'm not even going to bother with trying to sand the gel coat down to the shape and everything. You know, I just found that if I were to try and put all the tin foil and all that on there, there's no way I'd be able to catch some of the little details, especially like those little rivet mounting points and all that in the tin foil. It would just destroy it if I tried to mash the tin foil in there and all that, so it wouldn't have been the right option. So I'm going to go ahead and put a coat of PVA. That's this liquid film stuff that I was talking about. That's this stuff. I'm going to do a full coat of this over the entire flare, and that's going to help to create a little barrier from our gel coat. We're going to go in with the orange tooling gel coat. That's this stuff right here over the top. And we're going to let that cure for about 6 hours or overnight. I'll get it put on tonight, and then I'll do the fiberglassing over the top of the gel coat tomorrow after the gel coat has had adequate time to cure. And once that's all done, I'll do about 2 layers of fiberglass. Then I'm going to pull the entire thing off I'm going to separate the clay from the mold, and I'm going to pull all the clay that's trying to stick inside the mold out, and then I'm going to go ahead and lay in a layup of white gel coat. That's this stuff right here, and then that's going to be able to release from that mold as well, and that will be my positive that I'll pull out. At that point, there's going to be a shitload of refinement to do on this thing. I mean, anytime you're sculpting anything in clay, there's going to be like dips, there's going to be rises, there's going to be little scratches, little things here and there, little air bubbles. I mean, there's just going to be a shitload of work to do to get this thing done. That's where our body filler is going to come in, and our sanding materials, so we'll get that all taken care of. Once we have that in a really, really nice clean condition, we're going to actually mount it to the car. We're going to get rid of all this tin foil and all that. We're going to put it up into position and get it mounted in the correct spot. We're going to test fit it, and then we're going to go ahead and make our symmetry ribs to copy over on the other side. We're going to make those ribs according to the perfect, the final flare. All right. I just thought that that was the best way to do it, as opposed to the other method that I was talking about, which is effective too, but for this application, I think the other route is the way to go. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and do the PVA. I'm going to do the PVA. I'm going to wait for 20 minutes for that to cure on there, and then, or dry, I should say, not cure. And then I'm going to go ahead and mix up some gel coat and put the first layer of tooling gel coat on here. Get the mold going.